Number 10. Polly Rogers. In May 2018, 20-year-old Polly Rogers was excited for the end of the semester. She was a student at the University of North Carolina and was supposed to meet up with some fraternity members to visit a bar in Charlotte. She got on a party bus that her group rented to have the time of her life. Little did she know, it would be her last night alive. At some point during the fun, Victor Rabb, the bus company owner, believes that someone inside the vehicle unhooked an emergency latch on a window. This caused it to open up, leaving a large exposed area. Unfortunately, Rogers accidentally fell through the gap and out of the moving party bus. After the fall, 2 cars hit the woman and killed her. After an investigation, it was revealed that the bus wasn't covered by insurance and even had fake license plates. Despite this, Rabb said that the incident wasn't the company's fault. Passengers are required to sit through safety rules before leaving for a trip. He said that customers are specifically told not to touch the emergency latches unless absolutely necessary. A witness from that night claims that Rogers was leaning against the window when she fell. The same person also stated that they think the safety latches were broken before they even got on the bus. There was a large amount of alcohol being consumed that night, but if this was true, the party company would likely be liable for the death of Polly Rogers. Since the vehicle was operating without being insured, Rabb was handed a citation. The bus was also given to investigators, but the case was later closed due to lack of evidence. Number 9. Lockdown. The beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic was difficult for people all across the world. Businesses were shutting their doors and were told to stay inside whenever possible. In some places, there were even curfews set. Many cities banned gatherings over a handful of people, but of course, this didn't stop everyone from going against civic duty. In April 2020, 21-year-olds Bailey Meadows and Millie Robinson were found by police attending a party in Eastbourne, England. Officers were called to the scene after receiving multiple complaints of disruptive, loud music. When they knocked on the offending apartment's door, the cops were forcefully kept from entering. Apparently, Meadows hit an officer on the forehead with a toilet paper holder, and as a result, the cops suffered a large cut from the swing. Other partygoers physically assaulted the unwelcome guests with punches and kicks. Robinson even threatened to give them coronavirus. When authorities tried to place her under arrest, she lashed out violently. Robinson claims that the COVID lockdown forced her into a deep depression and that she was having an extremely difficult and lonely time handling it. But luckily, the pleas of pity didn't hold up in court. Meadows was sentenced to serve a year in jail, while Robinson was given 6 months. During their trial, Judge Stephen Mooney told the young women that they should be thoroughly ashamed of themselves. Number 8. Carly Wood. A Nebraska house party in November 2022 ended in the death of an innocent woman. 20-year-old Carly Wood was shot after a violent fight broke out at the Omaha gathering. 7 other people were struck by stray bullets, but they were able to recover. Sadly, Carly wasn't so lucky. It isn't clear who the shooter at the party was, or if there were multiple suspects. Police have stated that the incident wasn't just a random tragedy, but not much more has been said on the matter. The Omaha Police Department is still investigating the homicide and is now offering a reward of $25,000 to their community for any information on possible suspects. The victim's older sister, Autumn, identified her body and was devastated by the loss. She says that Carly was working as a waitress and saving as much money as she could to buy a house one day. The young woman was a light in the life of those who knew her and had a sincere heart of gold. Hopefully, police will be able to arrest whoever is responsible for ending Carly's life and hurting the other partygoers. Number 7. Bop Till You Drop. In March 2022, about 150 minors were hanging out and partying in Colorado on a Saturday night. The festivities took place on the first floor of a home in Aurora, but pretty soon, it moved down to the basement. It started off as a typical birthday party for the homeowner's 18-year-old grandson. Then, some of the guests attending shared the address online to their followers on social media. Eventually, a lot more people than expected showed up. An attendee, 15-year-old Cass Henry, said that he found out about the gathering online and thought it was an open house. Apparently, more and more people showed up until it was entirely out of hand. One second, everything was fine, but then, snapping wood was heard as the literal floor caved in. Miraculously, only 3 people were hurt, and just one of them sustained serious injuries. Photos from the home look as if a giant sinkhole opened up and swallowed the wooden floor. The teens fell through to the basement and were lucky to be alive. It'll definitely be a party these guests will never forget. Number 6. Twister. We've all seen middle-aged women who haven't quite figured out that they aren't teenagers anymore. But 35-year-old Rachel Leonard from Georgia might be one of the most delusional spinsters we've ever seen. As a mother of 5 children, she prided herself on being the cool parent that her kids' friends would be jealous of, but she took things way too far. In April 2015, Rachel's oldest daughter asked if she could invite some friends over to the house. At the time, the kids were all staying with their father. The mom quickly responded positively, saying, "Let's party." And that's exactly what they did. Several teens came to the woman's house, and she openly allowed them to drink and do drugs. The chill mom also engaged in a game of naked Twister with the kids in her living room. While her daughter and friends kept playing, Rachel and an 18-year-old boy in attendance went to the bathroom alone together. The two had sex, and afterwards, Rachel brought several inappropriate toys out. She proceeded to use them and pleasure herself in front of the minors. Later that night, after Rachel had gone to bed, she woke up to a 16-year-old being intimate with her. The boy was actually her daughter's boyfriend, which only makes things that much more disgusting. All of this information went public after the mother told her Alcoholics Anonymous sponsor what happened that night. This person immediately contacted the police to report what they'd been told. Even after everything that happened, no sexual assault charges were pressed against the woman. Rachel lost custody of all 5 of her children, but that's about the extent of the punishment she received. If you were at a party and things turned violent between several intoxicated people in attendance, would you try and break up the fight yourself? Or would you call the police and let them handle the situation before it got out of hand? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Number 5. Jacob JAROZEWSKI. Before the wedding, many brides and grooms like to spend time with close friends and loved ones. These bachelor and bachelorette parties sometimes get way too out of hand though. The day before his 26th birthday, Kansas City resident Jacob JAROZEWSKI was celebrating his engagement with some buddies in March 2012. A small bachelor party took place at a friend's home and was put together by his best buddies. At some point during the night, Jacob took part in a fight. The man was apparently fond of martial arts and jiu-jitsu, but things quickly escalated into senseless violence. Later on at around 5 in the morning, Jacob's dead body was found in the living room. The events leading up to his death are unknown, but a coroner did say that Jacob likely died from head or neck trauma. The man he fought with was questioned by police, but they eventually let him go without pressing charges. His fiancée, Alex Akmus, was beyond heartbroken by her lover's death. Just 2 weeks before their wedding date, her future husband was taken from her. Tom Akmus, her father, gained a lot of respect for the young man after he asked permission for Alex's hand in marriage. Tom said that Jacob was full of joy and would have made his daughter's life incredible. Number 4. Surprise. On January 7, 2023, 2 innocent women were murdered during a shooting in Madison County, Alabama. The 20-year-old victims lost their lives after a fight erupted and ended in an all-out guns-blazing battle. Caitlin Jenkins and Quantasia Grant were killed while 3 other people were critically injured. Investigators found over 200 bullet casings at the crime scene. Sadly, all of this happened during a surprise birthday party, and it was certainly a surprise those guests will never forget. A few of the injured people apparently crashed their cars into the hospital as they arrived. They were likely hanging on by a thread at that point. 13 victims were hurt in total during the incident, but only 2 of them lost their lives. Authorities believe that a few of the partygoers had pre-existing issues before that night. Something must have set them off and caused the situation to escalate, but detectives have yet to determine exactly what that might have been. 2 young men have been taken into custody for the shooting, 20-year-old Ashton Elliott and 19-year-old DeMarcus Thompson. Police believe that more will be arrested as information is revealed. Both suspects that have been apprehended face charges of felony reckless murder. Number 3. Courtney Stouffer. On July 28, 2012, after a night of partying, 21-year-old Courtney Stouffer disappeared in Pennsylvania. Over 10 years later, she's still missing, and no one really knows what happened. At about 9 p.m. that night, police responded to a tip about a party going on with underage drinking. They arrived at the apartment of Stouffer and her roommate, Brad Herr. Out of the 7 people discovered there, Stouffer was the only one legally old enough to drink. Eventually, the cops left after handing out citations and taking Brad with them for violating his probation. An hour or so later, Stouffer was invited to hang out with some friends at a bar in Hummelstown. The group didn't stay there long though, and left for Harrisburg's Hardware Bar. While partying there, the young woman was kicked out after getting into a fight. She and her friends were then briefly separated, but they met up later to get pizza. Then Stouffer and her friend Cody Pruitt went back to her apartment where she once again started fighting, this time with her neighbors. They were the ones who called 911 on the gathering earlier that night. After a brief altercation, things started to die down. Cody ended up sleeping over that night, but in the morning, he couldn't find Stouffer. On July 30th, she was officially declared missing. The woman attended one failed party after the other, and then she disappeared. To this day, no one knows where she went or what happened to her. Number 2. House Party. Two 17-year-old boys lost their lives at a party in Milton Keynes, England on October 19, 2019. Ben Gillum Rice and Dom Ansa were attacked and killed after several masked B3 gang members targeted the event. Apparently, rival gangs were in attendance that night, and revenge was on the table for Clayton Barker, Charlie Chandler, Earl Bevins, and 2 other minors. They showed up carrying knives and brutally assaulted the deceased victims and 2 others whose injuries weren't life-threatening. Ben suffered 6 stab wounds while Dom ran out of the house to avoid the fight. He was chased and then, according to court documents, was hacked by the members of the gang. In total, the young man had about 47 injuries, and unfortunately, he died in the hospital later that day. The slain boys had been close friends since grade school. Those who knew them described the 2 as long-lost brothers. After hearing about their deaths, Ben's dad, Jason Rice, said that the killers also took the lives of the victims' families. They will have to live with grief and longing for decades to come. The murderers were all handed life sentences in prison. They're required to serve at least 22 to 28 years before being eligible for parole. Number 1. Happy Birthday. In June 2014, state police in Pennsylvania were sent out to investigate an accidental shooting. 24-year-old Cody Gorsline received a bullet wound to his head while attending a surprise birthday party for his friend Derek Gare. The event took place at Derek's own home in Montoursville. At around 2 in the morning, after the celebration had died down a bit, the birthday boy took Cody upstairs to one of the bedrooms. While inside, he started showing Derek a gun. At some point while handling the loaded weapon, it fired and struck the victim. There didn't seem to be any signs of intentional killing, so the death was ruled as an accident. When it happened, a neighbor down the road said that she and her son heard people crying. The distress was loud enough for her to hear it several houses over. Information on this case is a bit difficult to find. It's more than likely that Derek Gare wasn't charged for the incident. He was probably punished enough after seeing his close friend get killed right in front of him on his birthday. Do you have any crazy stories about parties gone wrong? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Bad Badger.